keeping their eyes on a different thing, working in the background on something else. It's important to stay engaged. But I think that comes with a different kind of caveat as well, is that I would always suggest that it's important not just to stay engaged, but to be wary of being hyper engaged. And I think this is something to be very conscious of. There's a very human impact to this working from home thing, right? The agility side of things will come, but the human impact has to be taken care of, has to be aware of it. And if you're not concentrating on that, it's really important that you focus on what works for you, because the human connection is going to be important. I suggest that if you're working from home, you prepare for your day. Dress as you'd like to be seen, at least from the waist up. Create a daily backlog. And I want to say a backlog, it doesn't have to be in a tool, it could be just a list of post-it notes somewhere or a notebook. Manage family expectations, help people recognize where you're going to be. So I'm going to be working from this time to this time, and that's when I need my focus, and help manage that as well. And don't forget to synchronize with your team as well. Sometimes if you're using Scrum, of course, you could be using a daily stand-up for this, but it doesn't have to be called that. It could be something else. Syncing with your team is an opportunity to connect as a human, to connect together. And I think that's really important. The future of agility is going to be online for quite some time, it feels like. So let's make sure we set ourselves up for success. Manage your time. This is something that I'm still working on, should I say. And block out your calendar for breaks. It's an important thing. In the office, there's breaks. Okay, I finished that task, I'm going to go for a walk and get a coffee, I'm going to chat to somebody. But if you don't regularly put them in, then it can be quite difficult to take those breaks. And you need the breaks in your day to allow you to sort of feel more energized. Your brain needs that time to decompress, to process things, to assimilate knowledge. If you're constantly on the go, constantly engaged, it's really difficult to block out your breaks. Think about Pomodoro technique, which is creating 15-minute time boxes of energy and then moving through and moving on. Focus, don't multitask, one thing at a time, focusing on individual items and moving forward. So actually looking at not trying to do 5 things at once, just trying to focus on a single task. Automate where possible. Calendly has been a godsend for me. Calendly is a little tool that works, connects to your calendar and Zoom, and you can give a link to somebody that they can then book time in your diary. So you don't have to keep on backing to and fro between their calendar, your calendar. If you're trying to get meetings sorted out, automate wherever you can. Allow them to find time that slots in, creates a Zoom meeting, sends you an invite, and blocks in your diary. Really, really, really helpful. And one thing I would always say is try and add buffer to your meetings. You've got a half-hour meeting, add a 15-minute buffer afterwards, allow for that assimilation, allow for that kind of absorption of the meeting, writing notes and breathing. Otherwise, you get back-to-back meetings and you get very, very tired very quickly. I think it's also important to recognize that you need to take care of yourself. Yeah, this is an important thing, and a lot of people seem to forget. Right? You need to stay hydrated, stretch every now and again as part of those little breaks that you've put in. Also, you can say no to meetings. This applies when you're online as well as when you're in person, but you can say no, and it's fine to say, I'm okay, I'm doing something now, I'll connect with you in a minute. You don't have to answer the phone every time. And this is something that I'm also working with. Be present, but not hyper connected. Be available to your team. Just because you're working remotely doesn't mean that you have to, I suppose, be visible 100% of the time, because that's exhausting in its own right. Like trying to prove that you're actually working is a really important part of what people do. And it's really important that you showcase the work, but show value. Don't just show because you're present. I'm working from home, so I have to show that I'm online all the time. It's a trust issue. And actually organizations, as that trust grows, will grow with it. And don't forget to ask for help. And that help could come in any way, from mentors, from leaders, from your business itself, from your colleagues. But don't forget to ask for it. Everyone's in the same boat together. And I suppose that's where I kind of land here as well, is don't forget to take care of each other, right? Everyone's in the same boat. It's been difficult. It's been hugely hard for a lot of people. But you've got to make time for those human connections. Just because we're working remotely doesn't mean that we can't connect with each other as humans. We need to make sure we still keep those tacit bonds, those tacit knowledge with each other. Need to make time for like water cooler moments, as they say in the States, or those coffee moments, those corridor conversations. They're not happening if you're hyper connected and you're just focusing on the work. You need to allow for that breathing in the middle of this. Reach out to others, see if they're okay. It's okay to have those chats. Just because you're on the clock doesn't mean you can't connect as humans. And actually, it's okay not to be okay. It's bloody hard. It's really difficult. It's absolutely furlough. You've got stresses of finances, kids, homeschooling, working from the kitchen table. It's really hard. So it's okay to not be okay and to give yourself that kind of support from other people there. Be kind to everyone else because everyone's going through the same thing, right? It's really been quite difficult. But don't forget to have that fun and friendship and banter. Banter is that kind of that group language and fun that you have as a team when you're getting into that high performance state, right? When you're getting together and you're working, it doesn't always have to be about focusing solely on the backlog, solely in Jira, solely without the cameras on and just being present. Don't forget, you're all humans. Let's get together and still do that while we can, right? If we can't do that together here, it can be quite difficult. And I think with looking at this, we've got this huge global pandemic, but this huge issue that's been interrupting lots of people's lives. And agility is not going away. In fact, it's going to be more prevalent. Organizations need to be able to pivot. But actually, agility comes from the people that work within the organization. You create the environment for success, whether that be a virtual environment or a physical environment, and you allow for that to happen. You allow for that to grow. Right? There's been huge amounts of investment from lots of organizations and lots of things moving forward that makes a big difference. I think it's important to make sure that we don't forget our human connections with this. There's been a lot of work in the US on connecting humans together, connecting people together in this. A lot of UK work as well in this area and across Europe. But it's not just about creating high performing agile teams. It's about ensuring the individual is connected as well there. In a very VUCA world, this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world where things are changing at such a rapid pace that a global pandemic can race across the world in no time at all and affect every human in the world, it's almost as important to make sure that we can respond to change as quickly as possible as well. There's a huge amount that's coming in from that. And there's a lot of learning of this as well.